Hello! Today we continue our conversation with Gleb Nasovsky about their joint expedition with Anatoly Fomenko to Jerash and the matching of this ancient city to the description of Jerusalem in the Russian Chronicler. Anatoly Fomenko and Gleb Nasovsky have detailed their expedition in their new book, Phony Jerusalem. Gleb Vladimirovich, hello.
Hello, nice to meet you again.
Last time you said that Jerusalem, described in the Russian Chronicler, was Jerash. Please tell us now about what you saw inside the city following the pilgrimage route of the 16th century.
We are returning to Jerash and entering through the north gate, just as the pilgrim describes. By the way, why did they start from the north gate? Why were pilgrims admitted through the north gate? Because this high hill, where they arranged the New Testament part of the prop version of Jerusalem, and everything related to the New Testament, is precisely located near the north gate. The idea was that a pilgrim first would examine all that was related to the New Testament, considering it the most important, and then proceed to the south gate, where the Old Testament, secondary in relation to the New Testament, was located. That's why they arranged it this way. Today, tourists enter the opposite way. This is the ascent to the Church of the Resurrection. The north gate is on our left. In the distance is the modern city built beyond this ancient sanctuary transformed into the fake Jerusalem. The ascent is very steep, which is why they chose it as Golgotha, as a high mountain on which Christ ascended with the cross on his shoulders. The entering pilgrim would first climb this high staircase and feel like he was on the path of Christ ascending Golgotha. After that, he entered this space. Here, the map is shown. This space, measuring 90 by 126 meters, is actually surrounded by rows of columns. The pilgrim provides the dimensions of the Church of the Resurrection in Russian sajans. If we convert sajans into meters, it becomes exactly 90 by 126 meters. These dimensions are precisely indicated in the Russian Chronicler. I want to tell you about what we saw there. I will show various maps and our photos. When you read about it, you might wonder how can there be a church of such size. Imagine, 90 by 126 meters. This is a huge space. Today, with the help of concrete structures, such a building can be constructed. In those times, churches were domed, and building such a structure was impossible. In this great Church of the Resurrection, inside there was another church. That's how he describes it. So, inside one church, there was another church. In present-day Jerusalem, they tried to recreate this, but it turned out awkward. They have Golgotha inside the church and some church inside another church. They tried to recreate it. And it's evident that they tried to understand it without realizing what was actually described. The Great Church of the Resurrection was described as a rectangular enclosed area. It was called the Great Church. And inside this enclosed area was Golgotha. Inside the Great Church of the Resurrection, there is a mountain. If someone has been to Israel or seen some photos, there's actually a mountain right inside the church. Inside this Church of the Resurrection, there is a small hill, which is Golgotha. That's what was actually meant. In the Church of the Resurrection, there is an enclosed area, and inside, there is a mountain. That's the mountain. This is what it really looked like. Inside the great church of the resurrection, there was another elevated church. This was actually Golgotha. The number of steps was counted by the pilgrim. It's exactly as it is here. Entering this Golgotha, which was transformed from an ancient Roman temple, the pilgrim saw the Lord's sepulchre. This is the view of Golgotha inside the church from the other side. These are the remnants of columns surrounding the perimeter of the rectangular great church of the resurrection. And this elevated structure is Golgotha inside the great church. This is a photo from the outside. We are standing outside the great church of the resurrection, outside the rectangular perimeter surrounded by a fairly dense row of columns. They have not been fully preserved on all sides. They have been well preserved on this side, but on the other side, there aren't as many. But you can still see that they were all there. This is a view of Golgotha from outside the great church of the resurrection. These are the very steps to Golgotha, which are also described by the pilgrim, including their quantity. These are the same steps, from the other side. As the pilgrim ascended these steps, he reached a platform from which he had to climb a few more steps, and then he arrived at the place of the Holy Sepulchre. Look at how it was designed. This is Golgotha from another side. I will talk more about this later. We are returning to the Holy Sepulchre. As the pilgrim ascended Golgotha, he saw the Lord's sepulchre. The Lord's sepulchre was attached to the right side of the wall. The Lord's sepulchre was here. It was a certain stone structure. These are the remnants of what was there. It was like a small chapel, on the right side, in the corner. Inside this chapel was the Lord's sepulchre itself. The pilgrim writes it like this: the Lord's sepulchre was made of marble. It was not real. Queen Helena placed it there, and the real Lord's sepulchre was downstairs. Look, there is space beneath this floor. A little bit later I will show you the so-called real Lord's sepulchre, which was located below, beneath this stone Lord's sepulchre. People gathered here, the patriarch walked here, and there was the miracle of the descent of the holy fire. Once again, this is the place where the remnants of the Lord's sepulchre were. On the other side, there was a place where the cross stood. The actual cross was no longer there, but there was a recess for the cross. This is the drawing. Here on the drawing, you can see that beneath the floor, where the Lord's sepulchre stood, there was an internal space enclosed on all sides. And, as the pilgrim writes, it was bricked up. You couldn't enter there. All the doors were tightly closed. In reality, there was a hidden door, of course. But they didn't show it to the pilgrims, so that they would not request to look at the real Holy Sepulchre. They were told that it was all closed.
Gleb Vladimirovich, did the pilgrims who went to Jerash know that they were going to see a replica of Jerusalem?
Of course not. They were convinced that they were going to see the true Jerusalem. Here is that hidden door that leads there, which the pilgrims were not shown. They thought it didn't exist. And this is the hole, punctured into the underground chamber. Archaeologists have punctured it and surrounded it with stones so that no one would fall in. They did it themselves. This is the so-called real Holy Sepulchre. It was found not very far from this place, and it's made of lead, with the same ropes and seals that the Jews placed, if you remember the Gospel. Here is the plaque. These are not real ropes. They are depicted. They are embossed, cast in lead. And these seals with which the Jews sealed the Lord's sepulchre are depicted here. So, this is the Lord's sepulchre, as if real, made of lead, which was not shown to the pilgrims. It was beneath the stone one, and the pilgrims were told that it was there. Here is where the miracle of the holy fire took place. What was it?
Archaeologists have assembled the remains.
The mud flow destroyed everything. It was all buried in mud and stones, up to 4 meters high. Many columns were knocked down. Everything was destroyed. Later, archaeologists excavated and somehow assembled it, and they saw that something was here. They later assembled it. It should be understood that local residents also used a lot of these stones for construction. The city was largely built from these stones. There was a stone chapel here, and inside was the Holy Sepulchre. The pilgrim describes in detail how a standing crowd waited while the patriarch circled around, recited prayers, and waited. And here was the cross. You see, there's no roof over it, just open sky. The descent of the holy fire did not occur at midnight, as it does today, but at noon, close to noon. The sign that the fire would descend was when the sun began to shine on a certain cross that was specially placed here. As soon as they saw the sun reflecting off this cross, it was a sign that the descent of the holy fire would occur. If the sun did not reflect off the cross, it meant there would be no holy fire. There must have been various circumstances, I suppose. There were years when the sky was overcast, and the sun did not reflect off the cross. So, then, everyone had to understand that if it didn't reflect, there would be no holy fire. If it did reflect, if the day was clear, and the sun shone on the cross, it meant there would be the holy fire. The pilgrim describes all of this. Everything was precisely timed. After the sun began to shine on this cross, a specific number of prayers were recited, and a specific number of words were spoken. The patriarch took a bundle of candles in his hands and simply touched them to the marble lid of the sepulchre. Everything here was faced with marble. This is how it is described. So, what we see today is, first of all, in ruins, and secondly, all the marble has been removed and used for some construction or local residents' household needs. All of this was splendidly decorated and beautifully faced with marble. When the rays began to shine on the marble lid of the sepulchre, it would start to shimmer, and, in full view of everyone, they would bring candles to it, unlike today. Today, the patriarch goes somewhere and comes out with lit candles. But here, right in front of everyone, he would bring candles to the sepulchre's lid, and the candles would ignite. This was the holy fire. This was in the late 16th century. It was precisely during this time that a magnifying glass was invented, which could be used to ignite something. It was a new scientific method of obtaining fire. Few people knew about it at the time. It was an invention of only a few years. And it was used for such a miracle that attracted a huge number of pilgrims. Simply put, there was a magnifying glass on top, which people didn't notice, or even if they did notice, they paid no attention to it. Who cared if there was some glass up there, probably just a window? Because nobody knew what a magnifying glass was at that time, what properties it had that allowed it to ignite things. When the sun rose in such a way that its rays focused on the lid of the sepulchre, candles were immediately brought there, and they naturally ignited. I want to say that it was a very clever and scientific miracle. It was done right on the cutting edge of the science of that time. It was done very well and made a huge impression on believers. Now, let's go through the photos once again. This is the so-called real sepulchre. It was found not far from this place and it is now on display in a museum. These are various structures next to Golgotha, and the pilgrim describes them. The place where the crown of thorns was woven, the place where they did this and that, the navel of the world, many different sacred places. They were all within a few steps of Golgotha and they stuck all over it. There are remnants of all of this. This is a round church, which he describes as the navel of the world. Here it is, and some column fragment sticks out. And here is the entrance down to some cave, which they believed led to the underworld. They explained to them that from here, you could descend into the hell, and this was the navel of the world. Again, I emphasize that it did not look exactly like this. It was all beautiful, faced with marble, and everything was very, very luxurious. This is from another angle. Here, next to Golgotha, there was a certain ancient Roman cistern, a place for storing water. They turned it into an underground prison where Christ was in before the crucifixion. He was supposedly held here in this underground cave, next to Golgotha. There was no water in it anymore. He was kept here, then he was taken out and taken to Golgotha. That's exactly how it's all described. Of course, the pilgrim's description is somewhat incredible because it's just some kind of underground dungeon, just a few steps away from Golgotha. Obviously, the distances indicated by the pilgrim seem improbable. But in reality, it was all like that. Just a few steps from the prison, there was Golgotha. Everything was as the pilgrim described. And next to it lies this column. I showed it to you. It fell. The mud flow knocked it down, but it's a tall column.
It's the column to which Christ was tied when he was flogged.
All of this is described there. Next to the prison, there stood a column. This is Christ carrying the cross. How is it depicted? This is the column, a huge pillar. It fell, but it's still there.
And here is the entrance to the prison.
This is exactly how everything is described. There was also a stone block nearby, where Christ's feet were shackled. There is indeed some stone with a hole. Possibly, that's the same column. This is an overall diagram of Jerash. These are the north gates, where the pilgrim entered as described. He came in here, climbed steeply up to the Church of the Resurrection, to Golgotha, and explored everything. Then he went towards the underground church of Constantine and Helena, where the true cross was recovered. And then he went on to the Old Testament part, to the house of King David, to the house of Joachim and Anna, to the grotto of the Annunciation, to the Holy of Holies. I'll also tell you about that. But first, the New Testament part. After Golgotha, he went here, to the church of Constantine and Helena. What is the church of Constantine and Helena? We were in New Jerusalem. They tried to do something about this. It's an underground church built at the place where Helena, through excavations, found the very cross on which Christ was crucified. There's a staircase leading down into what looks like an underground vault. This is where the Lord's true cross was discovered. They did this very cleverly. Next to the Church of the Resurrection, they found an ancient Roman theater. It was situated on a slope. How was this all built? There were many doors. You see, many doors. That's how the pilgrim describes it. We approach and see many doors. We enter any of them. You see, it is on a slope. They came in here, and there were many doors. Then they descended these steps. The number of steps is precisely indicated, and it matches exactly what the pilgrim says. There were exactly that many steps. Then we keep going. And we see another recess where the true cross was recovered.
These are the doors.
The pilgrim approached from the Church of the Resurrection. Here he came in. He descended these steps.
These are the steps.
He could enter any door and descend the steps. There were exactly 30 of these steps. The pilgrim writes about it. Well, next. This is an old photo. The pilgrim approached from the Church of the Resurrection. He entered any door, descended 30 steps, arrived here. Then, after going a bit further, he had to enter another recess, which had 7 steps. And there, at the depth, was the place where Helena found the Lord's true cross. Indeed, you see, there's a dugout pit here. It's not meant for anything else, and it has 7 steps leading down. This is still like this today. Of course, they've added this. The theater is an old structure that they adapted. But here, they specifically excavated the pit. You see, they said, we'll go here, descend another 7 steps, and here will be the very place where the true cross was recovered. All of this matches the pilgrim's descriptions exactly.
We will continue our conversation with Gleb Nosovsky about the prop version of Jerusalem-Jerash next Sunday, December 27th. We look forward to seeing you in a week on the channel of the Multimedia Museum of New Chronology.